Hello and welcome to another LSB film podcast with me, your host Chris Brooks. Today I am joined by a truly fascinating guest, Lindsey Dawn. Lindsey is a former primary school teacher at a Church of England school with a background in science. Her career took a dramatic turn back in February 2020 when she felt it was her God-given duty to warn school leaders about the chaos which was about to unfold, what the world would soon know to be as Covid-19. That warning came to her in a dream, a vision that changed the course of her life forever. Since then, Lindsey has dedicated herself to holding the church to account, speaking out against the harm caused by abuse of power, moral hypocrisy, and what she calls blasphemy, when institutions put money before morals. Her mission is simple but profound, to make the church accountable, and in doing so, to help improve the quality of life for everyone.
Are you concerned about all this corruption being rebranded as conspiracy theory? Well, don't you worry. Sit back and relax and join in the conversation with today's guest. Welcome to another LSB Film Productions podcast with your host, Chris Brooks.
And so, yes, a very warm welcome to the show, Lindsey. Great to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me today, Chris. It's wonderful to be here.
My absolute pleasure. So, for the sake of the audience, let's start right at the beginning then. How did your journey unfold?
Well, my background is a primary school teacher for the Church of England, where I worked in Lancashire up until lockdowns began and the COVID pandemic. So my job was an early years leader. I was responsible for the teaching and learning of the early years department, which is ages 4 and 5. So I was a reception class teacher. I also worked as a Sunday school teacher in the Methodist Church. I was heavily involved in the churches up until the COVID pandemic started.
A lot happened then, didn't it?
And then life became unrecognisable. And still to this day, I look back on my old life as a teacher, and it's been 5 years since I've been in a classroom. So what I was led to believe was 3 weeks to flatten the curve was actually life-changing. And I'm learning that the pandemic was life-changing for many, many people, which has been very helpful for me because, like I say, my old life vanished literally in 2020. Yeah.
No, lots of people did. I mean, my life changed, not necessarily because of the pandemic, but at the very same time, my life went, "Ugh." But I do think everything happens for a reason, and I think we've been put on this course for a reason. I might not know what this reason is yet, but here we are. So how has that affected your family then?
So basically, as the pandemic unfolded, I actually called a meeting at my school in the February before the pandemic unfolded in March. And I believe in God, I believe in a greater source, a divine spiritual guidance.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a dream that the world was going to change suddenly. And all this is recorded in minutes at the school. So this was before we knew what was going to unfold. I said, the world is about to change, and it's in the book of Revelation what's going to happen. A system is going to come in that is not good for the people. And basically, things started to unfold. I was actually signed off sick with an irregular heartbeat. My heart started to beat out of rhythm, so the doctor signed me off.
Is that through stress?
Well, I believe it was partly stress because people couldn't understand my viewpoints that the world wasn't going to change for the better. I think because people are so used to listening to guidance from government instead of the internal guidance, which we've all got our own beliefs. But I believe in 2020, I was spiritually guided to give a warning to people that the times that we were going into were not going to be good for the people. And that is actually what has transpired, because as I speak to many people now, their lives haven't changed necessarily for the better. You know, people are looking, we look at the world stage now and it's like, what's going to happen today? It's almost like our nervous systems are being controlled by external stimulus now. And it doesn't have a good feeling. Like in 2020, it didn't have a good feeling.
It's because the elites know how the universe works, and so they have to keep us in fear because it keeps us it keeps us all in the same mindset. And if we're all thinking the same, then we think our reality into, well, we think our thoughts into reality.
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing. That's why in many ways I don't like scouring the internet for things that I know my fear addicted watchers want to click on, because it makes me depressed, because it's not necessarily something that I always want to be looking for, but I know that's what they click on. I'd rather report on something more joyous, you miserable bunch of, do you know what I mean? And so that's why they do it. They keep you in that low vibration because they know that we're manifesting what they want for them.
Yeah, it almost programs the subconscious. And if you just, all you've got to do is look at the adverts between programs, and they're not uplifting. Now, if we're in a state of higher vibration and we're happy, you know, we're going to look after each other. We're all interconnected spiritually. So if we've raised our vibrations in terms of we want what's best for each other and we're looking out for each other, we can't be controlled by an external force, an external government, for example. But if we're divided, which goes back to lockdown, if we're divided and in fear of each other, an external force can come in and control the masses, which I believe is what we're seeing now, which is what the Bible clearly warns the church about. And that was part of the reason I'm no longer in the classroom, is because I did warn the churches. I said, you know, the book of Revelation actually says about this system that's going to come in. I can't conform to it.
What was their initial, how did they take what you said, given that they are supposed to be of God?
They wouldn't meet with me. From both churches, the leaders would not meet with me. So that was why I couldn't pass on my safeguarding concerns, because I asked to meet with both leaders. And this goes to, it goes higher, it goes to the actual diocesan. Nobody would speak with me and hasn't spoken with me to this day. And I've got many letters that have been sent outlining the concerns. So in my opinion, which I can prove, the safeguarding system failed, so I wasn't able to continue in the classroom. If I foresee a problem, I expect to be able to voice my concerns. I was actually told, and I have it in writing, that I could not speak to parents, to mums and dads. Well, I worked for the mums and dads and the boys and girls and my colleagues. I couldn't have an external force tell me that I couldn't speak with people about my concerns when my concerns were clearly valid.
Did you, so you managed to speak with parents? I don't
No,
like
I
using
was
that word, mums and dads.
mums and dads. I was told that in writing that I was not to speak to parents, that I was forbidden from speaking to parents. And the logo of the diocesan was at the top of the letter, but they are refusing to take any accountability for those actions of silencing me. And in effect, it was a gagging order. If you're told that you can't speak, that's a gagging order. And that is something that has been in the news from this particular diocesan. I won't go into that particular case because it's not linked directly with me, but the church should never be putting gagging orders on people, because we're supposed to stand in truth. And if your voice is silenced, it can have detrimental effects on your health, your mental well-being, and this is what we've seen over the last 5 years. If somebody has a different opinion to the mainstream narrative, they are branded, for example, a conspiracy theorist, when
Or
actually
far right.
or far right. And what we're finding is there's many different viewpoints. We need to get to a stage in society where everybody, in my classroom, every child mattered. So every child had a voice, and it did. Some of them, when they voiced their imagination, you'd smile, you'd think, where's that come from? And we need that with the adults. Every adult needs to be able to speak their truth. As long as it doesn't harm others, it doesn't matter if we've got different opinions. I've got different opinions. Say, example, for how energy is produced, we'll use as an example. I believe that we can get free energy. And I've seen enough evidence of that. But I would be branded as some sort of conspiracy theorist. But I believe if the people got together and worked together for the greater good and not profit for corporations, that we could actually master a system where people, say pensioners, didn't have to freeze in the winter. We could provide energy for everybody. Is it a pipe dream? We'll never know until we...
I would say yes, but only whilst the people in charge are still in charge.
Yeah, so then we've got to ask ourselves, which again links back to my objections to government rulership in 2020, do the people in control have the best interests of the masses?
No.
Their heart. So if the answer is no, then the people have to take control at this stage. We're now seeing chaos because we are being led in the wrong direction, but by lower vibrational beings that could actually be narcissists. Okay,
How
so
would that look like to you? How, like you said, we need to do something, we need to take it back. But how does that in reality, how does that look like? There's a lot of people. There's a lot of people on this planet who maybe like some of those coming over on rubber boats. They're a completely different way of life to us. Do you know what I mean? Completely different ethics, morals, you name it. How do we all unite? Because they are part of the same human race.
Yeah, this is all by design, don't forget. So we're an island here. So if you put lots of different people with different cultures, but then take the resources away from certain groups, that's going to create conflict. I'll use an example from my classroom. So 30 children, 30 pieces of fruit. Okay, that's all we have, 30 pieces of fruit, 30 children. If I then invite half of next door's class in and I end up with 45 children, 30 pieces of fruit, and every child needs a piece of fruit, we're going to end up with conflict. So we can transfer that across to dental care, to hospital appointments, to vital resources for the people. If there's not enough resource, or we're led to believe that there's not enough resource, and other people come in and take that resource, that's going to create conflict. That's not because we are not one, it's because we're fighting in survival mode. And this again leads to who is in control of us. This is by design. So the people need to wake up to the tactics of narcissistic leadership. And then there's more of us. It's like I think it's A Bug's Life. If one ant stands up, they all might stand up. And that has never left me. I've said that to several people. That is true. And it's how we stand up. And it's getting the right people now that do have goodness in their heart to start to teach and educate the people. And then I believe personally that it's naturally going to happen. I believe in a time where evil reign ends and peaceful reign comes in. And I believe that that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing total chaos on the world stage, and people are going to unplug from this. And they're going to start looking at, well, what can we do? And this is where the church comes in. This is why it's so important. The church and state, the church and government are together.
Yeah.
Now, the church is the people. The people are the church. It's not to do with religion. The church is the people. It's that natural spiritual connection that we've all got between the hearts of one another. Okay. And it's nothing to do with ethnicity. It's nothing to do with religion. We're all one naturally. We've been strategically divided. Through every religion is goodness. But what's manifested is an artificial program to get us against each other and not together. So with the obviously what's happening with people coming into the country and the lack of resource for the people, it's naturally going to go one way unless we change it. So why have we not got enough resources? The church is one of the largest landowners. The church has got billions in the bank. So this is why the church, I believe, is the key to stopping what could be civil unrest if we don't step in now.
Is King Charles the king of the church?
He's the head of the crown, isn't he?
So is the church property land then essentially crown land?
Yes, yes. Which would need more. It's something I've touched on, but not something I'd like to give factual information on. Only that it has got, the church has got the ability to feed everybody, to house everybody, and to create a completely different reality than the one that is unfolding for our children now.
Absolutely.
And that is why I'm focusing on the church. And not so much the government. So at the moment, I can see people protesting to the government when actually, if we sort the church out, it will naturally snowball into the government as well.
Do you think there's enough religious people in the church for it to have effect, though? Because a lot of people I speak to, like even, I don't know about you, I'm spiritual. I believe there's a greater good, but I don't believe in religion. I think it's all a load of indoctrination. So I don't look at the church as a savior. I look at the church as part of the problem. And I imagine a lot of people in this country who aren't Muslim have a similar kind of viewpoint, just based on the state of the world, the country, and how it is. It's not particularly Christianly. Do you know what I mean? It's so.
Yeah.
Are you? I mean, I know what you're saying, and I agree with what you were saying to a point. It's just that, is it going to be that effective? Do you think the church has got that much power? Are you giving the church more power than it deserves?
In terms of resource, it's keeping the resource from the poor. So I would actually go as far as to say the church is committing blasphemy at this stage on the people. I believe that the church has been set up as a major tool to support government and harm to the people. So I'm certainly not I actually publicly at this stage repent from working for the Church of England, because what is now transpiring is that the cover-ups in abuse, and I'm not just talking on children, I'm talking about the abuse of power, is not from a creator of love. So that, in my books, is blasphemy, and they are not following the example of Jesus Christ, which is why they are there. They are there to help the poor, to show charity, to show compassion, and all we're seeing is them supporting elites that are harming the people. So I would say the church has got the power to change this. Will it change it without being forced? No, I don't believe. That's where the people can come in.
And even the Bible says you can only serve one master. So
Yeah.
you're either serving God or you're serving the government. You can't.
It says
do both.
God or mammon, so God or money. And many people now, their hearts are controlled by money. So if they're offered a certain amount of money, they will turn against their brothers and sisters.
So the bribe.
So we're seeing that in the police, unfortunately, which I've been dealing with as well. So we're just following orders. We're just following. But is it ethically and morally right? And this is what we need to bring moral conscience back in to society after what has been a traumatic 5 years for everybody. And I do think there's an element of psychological warfare at play.
But how much of this would you put down to money, though? Because, like you say, you either follow God or follow money. But the world that we live in, whether we like it or not, if you haven't got any money, you've got nothing. You've got no house, you've got no food, you've got no heating, you've got no clothes, do you know what I mean? It's easy to say, or it's easy for us to say, oh, yeah, but realistically, without money, you're screwed.
Exactly. So we can't have a system that's a slave system. It's a slave system. So if me or you become poorly for, say, 2 months, we can't work. We could lose our home. We could lose everything that we've worked for. And I've seen that firsthand. I've not been able to get back to the classroom since 2020. So I know what that feels like. And that is a slave system. That's basically, while you're working, you're okay, you're conforming, you can have some luxury. We'll give you a few days off a week, a year, slave. But if you're not fit for purpose, we'll get rid of you, literally. And we're seeing that with the benefit systems. They're choosing who lives and who dies. So this is what I'm saying about having potential psychopaths, narcissists in control of, authorities, say in the council. So this is where the people need to be back checking the policies. Same in the church, they need to be back checking policies. So, you can't just stop people's benefits, but that is happening. But what are the people doing about it? We've been separated, so we don't care about strangers, and that is the church's job.
The only stand I've made recently is because I was on Universal Credit. They wanted to redo the claim, so it had been like 5 years, and I can't remember if it was 3 years or 3 months bank statements from me and my wife. And I thought, you know what, for what we get, half the time it's nothing. At the most, it's about 90 quid. And I thought, no, bollocks. So we cancelled the claim. And I'm not going to be, my only fear now is that YouTube started doing this whole ID thing as well, because that's at the moment my only way of earning any money. But it's like Patreon, they're now asking for ID. And so I'm now at the stage where am I just going to knock that on the head? It's scary times where, you've got your morals in one hand and you've got how you live in the other hand. And it's how do you, as much as it is about the church, and I fully take on what you're saying, I think the inequality is probably as much of the problem, isn't it? And you touched on that earlier, because take the lockdowns. If you had, I don't know, 20 grand in your bank account, those lockdowns probably wouldn't have been that bad, would it? In fact, would have been quite a nice holiday. And you wouldn't have had all the fear that everyone else has, because it all boils down to poverty. And that really is, that's the crux, isn't it?
Yeah, and this is what concerns me about the church. If you look at the church bank accounts and the charities that are linked to the church, you're talking millions into billions of pounds.
Tax
So
free as well, isn't it?
tax free, yes. The saying, and I don't want this to be aimed towards the church leadership in any way, because I've known very good church leaders, including the two that I worked with. They were bound by their contracts. So I believe that that's why they couldn't speak with me at the time. And so I don't have anything against anyone that I work with. I'll make that clear now. But they are being controlled, like you say, by, you can't serve God and mammon. You can't serve God and this system now in this time. The church has the funds to be able to transfer it to the people so that the people do not have to face poverty. What we're seeing is people not just on the breadline, living day to day now, and not being able to get healthcare treatment, not being able to get dental treatment, which is a threat to life. So we're no longer in a society that is
And it's
thriving.
so expensive.
It's ridiculous, and it's
Even
all
even to get my kids, they wanted like 70 quid each.
Yeah, it's become unaffordable, but it's not. It doesn't have to be this way, because then you've got to look at money. And what is money? What is fiat currency? It's not backed by gold. So what actually is it? Whoever's creating the money, which is the bankers, which is a completely other, a different topic, but it's all by design to cause harm on the people. Some people would even say it's population control. But the church is going along with this. While ever the church is as wealthy as it is, it's going along with harming people, which is blasphemy. The church is there to serve each community. So as a church leader, for example, say I'm church leader I'll use Liverpool as an example. I'll look at how many people are in Liverpool. Doesn't matter where they're from. I'll look at each individual living being. Right, I need this amount of money in the pot. I need this amount of housing. The amount of empty shops that there are, the amount of empty buildings that are boarded up because the council own them. The council can't just keep having empty buildings when we've got a homeless crisis. So this is all to do with policy. And if the people can take the power back from these corporations, we're dealing with dead corporations, and the living cannot contract with the dead. And this is what we're seeing, a lot of people rising up against parking fines, against council
Tax.
against council tax. You know, they're basically, the corporations are risking the lives of people now. It's like pay your council tax or feed your children. This is crazy. And this is what the Bible warns us of. And this is why I'm standing up against the church. Now, I've served the church most of my adult life, and I've got countless witnesses that can give statements on that. It's now come to the point that the church will not re-employ me. The church will see me homeless. I've spent most of lockdown actually homeless, living on the road in a van because of this, because the church has basically put me in exile. And that is not the job of the church. What we're seeing now are the true colours. We're seeing people's hearts come out to the surface and what people actually stand for. And good always wins. And I'll say that to any church
Well,
leader.
this is what I'm hoping. I'm kind of backing that horse. That good will always win.
We have to, because that's where we morally stand. You know, they could offer me, they could say, okay, then we'll give you £500,000, whatever. There you go. But you've got to conform to this system that's harming people. No, I'd rather make the stand now, like I did in 2020, and say no. For example, and I'm not going to get into the debate on medicine because that's a grey area, but to actually put a policy that is no jab, no job, that has destroyed livelihoods. Not everyone can take the same course of action with medication. So to put that pressure on people, when, if we actually look back, I'm going to take something Justin Welby said. I've actually written it down here. So the Archbishop that covered up the horrific child abuse stated that Jesus would take a vaccine. So how much pressure did that put on people? You know, nowhere does it say in the Bible anything about vaccination. So that again is a programming tool that is being used through the churches. And what I would say now, Church of England and other churches that jumped on board, you are responsible for your actions. You're there to guide the people in the right direction under the words of Jesus Christ, basically. So you've basically instructed all people to take the vaccine to love thy neighbour. So 5 years on, as we conclude the COVID experiment, do you stand by your judgment? Because we've got to be able to admit when we're wrong. I'm quite happy to admit if I am wrong on this, but I do not believe it was almost like bullying in the church. The church,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think not even that, even like this platform, YouTube, the amount of videos that people had taken down, people had strikes, therefore they weren't able to earn because they were essentially reporting the truth before the mainstream would say it was the truth. So what about those companies? What about loss of earnings? What about should people be able to sue these big corporations for things like that? Because surely they also should have to comply by freedom of speech, because nothing that was said about those COVID injectables was a lie. So surely there needs to be account across the board, not just the church. But yeah, sorry.
no, I think
I've got a bit of a rant with YouTube.
yeah, well, I think they're all centrally controlled, to be honest, Chris. That's the conclusion that I am coming to. But we're at a time now, 5 years post-pandemic, post-lockdowns, where we need a conclusion. Now, we were told, follow the science. Follow the science. I'm a science teacher. I have a science background. We have a conclusion and an evaluation. We have results, conclusion, evaluation. So I'm still following the science, even though my life as I knew it has been taken from me by the system. I'm still following the science. So I am now demanding, asking the people to get behind me to force the government to conclude this human basically experiment that we've all been subjected to. And that's nothing to do with the mandates, the injectables, how it was handled. And if harms have been caused to the people, the government is accountable for those harms. You know, if we've got people who were stable in good jobs and they're, you know, able to look after their families, and now we've got people who I can't even rent anywhere now, because on paper it's like I've come over on a boat, because the Church of England will not.
Well, then technically you should be able to get everything.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but for some
Yeah, I know
reason
what
I
you mean.
can't. For some reason I can't. I've paid into this system. I've worked full time as a teacher all my life, all my adult life, and I'm not allowed a penny from the system. So this shows the corruption of the system as well, and how it is being used to divide the people. Because I've got two standpoints. I could look and say, well, all these people are coming in and taking from the system I paid into. I'm not falling for that, because I know it's set up that way. I'm saying, okay, they need as well, but so do we. So do we. When I see veterans on the streets, when I see homeless children of like 16, 17 that haven't got a chance in life, I say, well, why are you giving to this group and not to this group? You're creating, I believe they want to create racial divide.
Of course they do, yeah.
That is, at first I thought, do they? I'm 100% sure that's what they're going for here. And this is where the people need to rise above this and see it for what it actually is. It's not to do, I mean, they can put a clip out of, say, somebody from another country that's come here behaving in a certain way, and we're programmed to believe they're all like that. And that might be staged. You know, what we need to...
I think there is definitely one big psyops going on for
Yeah,
sure. But there
yeah,
are also some dodgy mother foes coming over.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
That's not to
And
say there aren't some dodgy mother foes already here from this country. I'm not saying it's just them, but the majority of those that are coming over are probably like the council estate kids from our country going somewhere else. We're not getting the best of, are we?
No, I mean, if you were emigrating, you used to have, say, a certain amount in the bank. You used to have skills so that that society wouldn't be drained from you being there.
No,
You had
it would benefit from you being there.
yeah, and that's what we need to look for. And if we change the actual system, everyone's got something positive to give under the right conditions. If people are in survival mode, this is why you're seeing criminal activity. They make so much money off illness and crime. So at the moment, the system encourages illness and crime. So we need to change the system so it encourages health and social behaviour.
Absolutely. I'll give you a couple of good ideas, which I can't remember what countries do this, but I have heard about it. Even down to like the prison system. Here, you go to prison, you come out, you've got nothing, you go back to crime because that's just how it works. I can't remember where it is, but somewhere, because they work in prison, they get paid a wage, but they don't get given that wage. They get paid a proper wage for working 40 hours a week. So then when they come out of prison, they've got all that money that they can then go to rent a house, or they've got money. They don't need to all of a sudden go and rob.
Yeah.
So there are things that we could do as a nation, as a society, that can help, even from like prison side of things. But then you look at how much money the government are given to Ukraine and all these other different countries, and that in alone would be enough to sort out the poverty in this country.
Yeah, yeah. It's you've got to ask, and this is why we need full transparency, Chris. The people need to be able to see where their tax money is actually going, and is it going to the people? Is it going back into infrastructure, for example? And it's not. Look at the state of the roads. Look at the state of our towns and our like seaside villages. They're collapsing. And this is because corporations, often from outside of this country, are taking over. Let's take Airbnb, for example, the amount of properties that Airbnb now have in their portfolio, but there's not enough houses for people. So again, tourism, making money, corporations, corporate greed has taken over to a point where it needs taking back. The power needs taken back by the people. You've got to look at the CEOs in charities. They're on Extraordinary wages.
300,000, 250,000. Yeah.
A story, something that stands out in my mind. So I went from the classroom to Wales. I'll get on to that in a moment. And I went into a charity shop. I think it was West Wales. And there was a homeless man in there and he wanted a coat. And I was just listening to this conversation. He didn't have any money on him. And the coat was, I think it was something like, I don't know, about £10 or something. And he wasn't able to get this coat because he didn't have the money. And I'm like, the charities are now businesses. Oh my goodness. This is what I'm saying. Everything that's set up supposedly for good has been taken over by corporations. So it's all been turned into business. So if we had charities that were truly charitable and didn't have to make a profit, we wouldn't see the poverty that we're seeing. So the charities and the churches are the way that the people can start to take control back, rather than giving all energy to the government and writing petitions, and which we all know doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's time to glitch their program because they want us to aim our energy. Energy is attention, energy in motion. So they want us to aim it towards them in the government. What I'm suggesting is aim it to the church, who is commanded to help the people. And we as the church, if the people become the church and highlight the daylight robbery that the church corporations are doing to the people, this could destabilize. That's where I'm hoping. And I do believe we've got an element of control in creating a new reality as well. So I'm creating a reality where the people join together and get the resources back from the church corporations and start to change this system and start to change the policies.
Sounds great. It does sound good. So for anyone watching then, what message would you give to those people wanting to get involved in this?
Well, it's in the early stages. So what was revealed to me when I left the classroom and went to Wales was actually a book that's hidden inside the book of Revelation. So inside the book of Revelation, there's actually 3 books that I can speak about. In Daniel, there's a sealed scroll of Daniel 12:4. There's a little book of Revelation 10:10 and the book of true life, Revelation 20:12. And anybody can back check those 3 scriptures. So the church canon has closed the Bible at 66 books. And you're told if you add or take away that you will be cursed. Okay, so again, closing the consciousness. The prophecies say that
With fear as well.
with fear. So the return of Christ, some say it's consciousness, some say it's spiritual awakening. The church leads you to believe that if you pay them, you will fly off in a rapture. They don't know where you're going to fly to, though, when you ask them. But you're going to go because you're so godly and sinless. You're going to fly off with that corporation while us sinners have to go through tribulation. And then this man's going to appear on the clouds to save us all. I'll stand in front of any church and say, that is nonsense. At this stage, we have spiritually evolved to a point where we can see through the veil now. So it's time to step down off the pedestals of the altars and admit you've added and taken away to the scriptures and you've put your own twist on things because you're operating as a business. So within the book of Revelation, I'll just talk about Revelation 20:12, which is the book of true life. This is what appeared to me and why I believe I was forced to resign, but equally I believe I was guided out because I believe we're on an evolutionary journey and I could have stayed as a teacher. Would I have evolved to this point to be able to hopefully change the system and help change the system? No, I think we sometimes fear the unknown. I actually said to a good friend of mine that was actually my boss at the time, I said, I'm taking a leap of faith and I don't know what the ground is going to look like underneath. It's like I'm walking on a tightrope and I can't look down right now, but I know there's going to be purpose in this leap. So this book has appeared. I have studied this book of true life, which is promised in the Bible. I've studied it for 5 years now. I've actually made a selection of study books for the churches. So I'm inviting the church, not just the Church of England, I'm inviting the Church of England first to come and study this book with me. It's free to download on my website. I would love the people to read this book. I believe it is the third part of the Bible, which will be known in time as the Third Testament. Anything that comes to the religious institutions that is new, they will say is not true. That's what I've learned. But I believe that if the people read this, like I say, it's free.
Well, if you leave me a link to your website, and I shall put that in the video description, and then people can go over and have a look.
Excellent. Because it does say at the end of the age, which we're now going from Pisces to Aquarius, we're going from the second era to the third era. It's called the Spirit of Truth. So all those that are seeking truth and righteousness are going to be the ones that rise up now. So I believe that this is going to, that the tables are going to turn, and we've got to hold on to that hope, because if we haven't got that hope, what future are our children going to have under this current system?
Exactly, 100%, and I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's a lovely place to end it. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you
And
so much.
thank you for all the time and energy and fight that you're giving to this, because we need more people like that if we are to succeed at all in moving forward. And I hope everyone watching it has enjoyed it and learnt from it, and maybe given them some inspiration to join the fight as well. But until next time, look after yourselves, take care, and bye for now.